Welcome back to Epic Movie Home. Today I'll be reviewing a horror mystery movie of 2004, titled The Village. In the 19th century, there is a village located in Pennsylvania named Covington. This is a very strange village where nothing red is allowed. They don't even allow red plants or flowers, and once they seize one, they'll quickly bury it. The village is surrounded by forests, and the woods that surround the village are off limits to all the villagers because the villagers have a legend that human-eating monsters lives there. The monsters likes the color red but are afraid of yellow. Therefore, to protect the younger generations, watchmen are assigned in each corner of the village to signal the monster attacks. Many years ago, a boundary was set by the ancestors and the villagers that as long as the villagers don't enter into the forest, the monsters will not attack them. But unknown to the villagers, the deal has already been broken by a man named Lucius, during his patrol duty along the borders of the village. One of the village elders just loses his son to an incurable disease, which makes Lucius wants to leave the village and travel to other towns, in hopes of finding medicines and other solutions that may prevent further deaths in the village. But his request is quickly denied by the village elders. At night, the watchman on the watchtower hears something strange. He first thinks it's his colleague coming to change shifts, but instead, he sees a red monster entering into the village. The watchman was terrified and quickly rings the alarm bell to signal danger to the villagers. When the villagers hears the bell, they starts running into their various houses. Lucius, being a brave man, helps the women and children to close their windows, but doing so puts him in danger. At the same time, Lucius' girlfriend Ivy opens the door and stands in the middle, where she's anxiously waiting for Lucius to come home. She's blind, so she stretches her hand forward waiting for Lucius to take it, but what comes towards her is a monster. The monster is getting more closer to her and Ivy is trembling with fear. Just as the monster is about to catch her, Lucius comes back. Lucius quickly closes the door and takes Ivy to hide in the basement. Everyone was filled with fear, praying the monsters won't find them. The next day, the monsters had left, but every doorpost is left with a red mark by the monsters. The elders of the village calls an important meeting on how to deal with the monsters' attacks, and that's when Lucius confesses to everyone, admitting he broke the deal between the villagers and the monsters, by trespassing into the woods beyond the village's boundary, causing the monsters to attack them. Lucius was ashamed of what happened, but even so, he was praised as being a very brave man. It happened that Lucius saw his friend Noah holding some red berries yesterday. Noah is a mental disabled man. He couldn't explain where the berries came from. But according to the marks Noah made on the stone, the berries were picked in the forest, and he ventured into the forest several times. However, Noah always returned to the village safely every time, which makes Lucius curious. One night, a party is being held in the village. During a lively dance, children's screams are heard, and they quickly realize that the monsters have returned. Coming out, they find out that several sheep have been killed and hung above porches of several houses. This makes the village chief anxious because he's hiding a huge secret. A few days later, Lucius proposes to Ivy and she gladly accepts. Noah is very sad when he hears about it. He comes to Lucius' house and stabs him repeatedly when he's not paying attention. It turns out that the three grew up together. Noah and Lucius are both in love with Ivy, and Noah thinks the only way to get Ivy to himself is to kill Lucius. When Ivy comes back, she found Lucius in a very critical condition and he may die. To save Lucius, Ivy wants to go through the forest to the town to get medicine. Her chief father Edward doesn't want her to become a widow, so he agrees. But before Ivy sets off, her father takes her to an old shed, where he's going to show her a secret he'd been hiding his whole life. Entering the shed, he told Ivy not to scream. With her father's help, Ivy reaches out her hands. Ivy touches the thing in front of her and she realizes that it's the claws of a monster. She's terrified. Edward then decides to tell her their real past. It turns out that the elders of the village are a group of people who are completely disappointed by the outside world, and they've all lost their loved ones to the people in the other towns for one reason or the other. So they came here many years ago and built this village. To keep the younger generations from going out, they made up the legend of the monsters, and the so-called monsters are actually the elders who put on these red costumes. The chief wants Ivy to keep the secret, and at the same time, he tells Ivy there's indeed a legend of the forest monsters, and he's not sure if it's true or not. For her safety, the chief arranges two young men to escort her out of the village. But just an hour into the forest, the young men escaped back to the village because they're too scared. Ivy have to continue the journey alone, and suddenly she falls into a big pit. Fortunately for her, she grabs a tree root and slowly climbs out. She checks her body and realizes there's a lot of mud on her cloth. She's horrified because she knows that the mud has covered up her yellow cloak. Remember, the monsters like the color red but are afraid of yellow. Just then, she hears a horrific sound from her behind, and she desperately runs away. Due to her blind state, She couldn't run very far away. When she stops to take a break, she's unaware that she's standing in the middle of a lot of red berries. Suddenly, a monster charges towards her. Ivy quickly thinks of a way to escape and leads the monster to the previous pit hole. She stands on the edge of the hole, and when the monster charges again she dodges, while the monster falls into the hole and is pierced. The monster turns out to be Noah, who stole the red monster costume from the village's chief shed, in attempt to drive Ivy back to the village. Ivy continues her journey and finally, she reaches a big wall. She climbs over the wall and coincides with a policeman who is on patrol. With the help of the policeman, Ivy gets the medicine. Then she returns to the village alone and successfully saves Lucius. Later, the village elders tells the villagers that Noah's death was caused by a monster attack, and Ivy promised the elders to always maintain the secret. Doing so, the terrible legend of the monsters will continue in the village. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click on one of the videos above, to enjoy more content.